My name is Theodore Hoffman. I'm a 70-year-old man living in a German village called Augsburg, which isn't far away from the city of Trier. I have been living in this village since October 1946, but went to Trier to work as an administrative manager for an industrial company that made machines. In January 1957, I met a Swedish woman my age that had moved to Trier in what was then Western Germany. Her name was Alma. She became my secretary, and for the both of us, it was like love at first sight. We had so much fun together as lovebirds, and before we both knew it, she was carrying my first child before we even married. Yet, I married her in an instant after she was only 2 months pregnant. In February 1958, our son Christoph was born, and a year later in March 1959 came our twin daughters Elke and Ida. When our kids grew up to teens, they made us proud to the core, since they were liked by teachers for their good grades and they had many friends. I remember them growing up to adults, and they all now have young children themselves, which I love very much. Me and Alma were able to enjoy more time with them since we both retired in 1986. A feature that all of our family has is that we all had the same hair and eye colors. Blonde, almost golden hair, and blue eyes the color of an ocean. This was a feature that, in the period of the Third Reich, was considered Aryan. Many Germans at the time were indoctrinated by the idea that the Germanic and Nordic peoples were Aryans and the masters of the world. Swedes, being Nordic Germanics, were also considered to be Aryan by Hitler and the Nazis. It was mainly the German youth that was heavily indoctrinated by these ideas, particularly within the Hitler Youth, and I had been one of those myself. Yes, back in those days, before and partly during World War II, I was a fanatical young Nazi that truly believed that Hitler could bring Germany and its people to greatness. When I was 18 in 1941, I underwent military training, although I was one of the best soldiers since I already underwent heavy military training in the Hitler Youth. A year later, after I completed my military training, I had to choose between joining the Wehrmacht or the SS. Due to my heavy belief in Nazism, I eagerly joined the Waffen-SS, wishing to fight on the Eastern Front against the Soviets. Yet, for all my wishes, me and several other German soldiers were sent to occupied Norway to serve as border guards on the border with Sweden. Our job was to ensure that no Norwegian would flee the occupied country to Sweden. I loathed the job, since I wanted to fight the Russians so eagerly, because I truly viewed them as Untermenschen, subhumans. I wasn't alone though. The fellow soldiers of my small battalion wanted to fight on the front lines instead of guarding a border, where fellow Aryan Nordics would try to flee to another country with fellow Aryan Nordics. The SS battalion I was in was called SS Battalion Bloodwald, translated in English as SS Battalion Blood Forest. This was an SS battalion mainly composed of ethnic and Aryan-like Germans, but one was a Norwegian collaborator who had learned German to the core after the occupation of the country began. Now, I know what you're thinking. There was no such thing as the SS Battalion Bloodwald, since there are no documents referring to it. Well, it's because there are no documents left of it. Most of them were destroyed when the Allies marched deeper into Germany at the end of the war, burned by the retreating SS. But before that, they were hidden deep away because of the statement from the only survivor of that battalion. My statement. This is my story. July 2nd, 1943. German-occupied Norway near the lake Halsjön, about 3 kilometers west of the Swedish border. The fog was low that morning, hanging like a tired ghost over the pine-covered hills that surrounded our camp. I remember the stillness in the air, how even the insects seemed to hum softer, as if nature herself was holding her breath. It was strange, but not alarming. Not yet. I was just 20 years old, an SS Sturmmann with polished boots and polished beliefs. We had been stationed in that part of Norway for 4 months. Our battalion, SS Battalion Bloodwald, consisted of about 50 men, handpicked, loyal, fanatical, the so-called best of the best. My 4 closest comrades were Karl Weber, Tall and arrogant with a square jaw and a cruel laugh. Otto Weiss, thinner, quieter, but with an icy gaze that never seemed to blink. Sigmund Steinberg, who despite the Jewish-sounding last name, was a devout believer in Aryan supremacy. He insisted that his surname came from noble, Bavarian blood. And finally, Erik Sorensen, the only ethnic Norwegian among us, a collaborator who had been handpicked for his language skills and ideological devotion. He could recite Mein Kampf at the evening campfire better than most Germans I knew. We had one shared frustration: boredom. We were wolves kept on a leash, wasting our best years patrolling forests, interrogating locals, and watching a border that no one dared to cross. At least, not often. One more week in this damn forest. Karl muttered that morning as we checked our rifles. And I'm going to start interrogating pine trees. Otto snored. Maybe they know something, yeah? Perhaps the Moss Heights filthy communists? We laughed. Erik, always keen to impress, chimed in. If we were on the Eastern Front, we'd have killed 20 Soviets by now. More, Sigmund added. The Russians are like vermin. You shoot one, 3 more crawl out of the snow. My stomach turned. Not at the talk. I believed every word back then, but at the realization that I might never get to prove myself on the battlefield. Guarding Norwegians from fleeing into Sweden didn't carry the same glory. Our commander, Heinrich Metze, was a man in his late 40s, thin as a corpse, with sunken eyes and a voice like dry gravel. He had served since the Great War and worshipped Hitler like a prophet. He rarely left his tent unless it was for inspection or screaming. The only order he repeated more than our daily patrol routes was this: do not step into Sweden, ever. It was clear that if one of us crossed the border, even a step, we'd be court-martialed. Some joked that the real reason was fear of the Swedish neutrality breaking, but others, like Metze himself, hinted at stranger reasons. There are things in that forest, he once told me, without meeting my gaze. Things better left alone. The Swedes know it too. I thought he was trying to scare me into obedience. Now, I'm not so sure. That evening, we sat around the fire, eating thin stew and stale bread. Erik told a joke about a Russian soldier and a broken rifle. We laughed harder than we should have. Laughter came easy when death felt so far away. We had patrols every night in shifts. Armin and Gunther, 2 younger men who still boasted about their first blood drawn from a resistance fighter weeks prior, were assigned the watch. The rest of us retired to our tents. The wind whispered through the trees like a lullaby. There was nothing unusual. But there was July 2nd, 1943. July 3rd, 1943. The sun rose behind a curtain of pine trees. We were tasked with collecting water at the lake called Halsjön, which was directly on the border with Sweden. The 5 of us, me, Karl, Otto, Sigmund, and Erik, walked there together, rifles slung lazily over our shoulders, our helmets off but dangling on our necks. The water of the lake shimmered like silver under the weak sunlight. I can't wait to finish this damn assignment, Karl muttered while rinsing his canteen. After this, I'll request a position on the Eastern Front. Otto nodded. Yes, I want my boots deep in Russian snow. Want to watch them run as they bleed. Erik laughed. Maybe they'll give us tanks this time. I didn't laugh. Something about the lake put me on edge. It was too still. I glanced across the small island about 200 meters east of the shore where we stood, the one called Svartholmen. Then I saw something. A person. What is that? I whispered, raising my binoculars. It was indeed a person there, a woman somewhere in her mid-20s. She stood barefoot on the rocks, wearing what looked like a white dress that clung to her as if damp. Her skin was pale, not sickly, but radiant, glowing against the darkness of the water. She was tall, slender, graceful, and though her facial features were too distant to see clearly, her figure, her posture, radiated beauty. She looked like a perfect Aryan woman. Except she wasn't. That damn long cold black hair that covered her back was out of place among her otherwise Nordic appearance. Karl stepped beside me and whistled. "Wow, such a beautiful sight, ain't it, comrades?" "She's not blonde," I muttered, lowering the binoculars. "She doesn't need to be," Karl said. "That's the goddess Freya in the flesh." "Don't be ridiculous, Karl," I snapped. "No Aryan woman has hair like that." "It's probably dyed," Eric offered, squinting. "Maybe she's Swedish, or perhaps Sami." "Look how still she is," Otto muttered. "She hasn't moved once." He was right. The woman didn't fidget, didn't pace, didn't even seem to breathe. Sigmund said, "Why would a woman be out here? Alone, no canoe, no smoke, no shelter." "Maybe she's bait," Karl said, "to lure us onto the island." "For what?" I asked. "Who knows? Could be Norwegian resistance. Could be nothing." He licked his lips. "But damn, she's beautiful." I felt uneasy. There was a heaviness in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. I looked back at the island, raising my binoculars again. She was looking at us now, right at us with dark blue eyes. "We should report this," I said. "And say what? That 5 grown men were bewitched by a pretty woman?" Karl mocked. Sigmund crossed his arms. "Still, it's suspicious. We should let Commander Metze know." "No," Otto said quietly. "Let's see if she's still there tomorrow. Maybe she's just a lost woman from Sweden." We returned to camp in silence, the sun now hanging low and yellow in the sky. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my cot inside the canvas tent, staring at the ceiling, fingers drumming against the rifle at my side. The camp was unnervingly still. Even the owls had gone quiet. Then, I heard it. Faint, barely audible, but clearly the voice of a woman. Singing. I sat up slowly. It was a haunting tune, unfamiliar but oddly soothing, like something from a forgotten lullaby. Scandinavian maybe, or even older? I stepped out into the night, rifle slung and boots crunching lightly on the cold earth. The singing came from the east, from the direction of the lake. "Must be dreaming," I whispered to myself, sighing a bit. The air was cool, and I felt beads of sweat forming at the base of my neck. A part of me wanted to follow the sound, but another part of me told me to stay put. Eventually, the melody faded, and so did the night. The sun rose on July 4th, 1943, with an eerie silence, the kind that presses down on your ears like a heavy fog. Birds didn't chirp. The morning breeze that usually teased the tent flaps was absent. When I stepped out into the clearing, something in my chest told me the camp had changed. My colleagues, Armin and Gunther, were gone. Both had been assigned to the night watch. Their rifles remained beside the guard post, propped neatly against the tree stump. Their boots were there too, aligned like soldiers awaiting inspection. Not a sign of a struggle, no blood, no tracks. "Where the hell would they go barefoot?" Karl demanded, pacing with growing agitation. "Are they mad? Or traitors?" Commander Metze stood rigid at the center of camp, his lips pressed into a narrow white line. His eyes scanned the tree line with haunted suspicion. "They deserted," he finally said. "Fools. They will be punished for cowardice in absentia. We say nothing to headquarters. We cannot appear weak." But I saw the way his fingers trembled. So did Sigmund. "No one deserts like that," Sigmund muttered to me. "No rations missing, no sign of where they went. It's like they vanished." "They were the ones who stood guard last night," I said slowly, remembering the faint melody I'd heard. "What if they heard something? Followed it?" "Followed what?" Eric asked. "Ghosts?" "A woman," I replied. They stared at me. No one laughed. That afternoon, we returned to the lake, hoping to spot the woman again, hoping to make sense of the madness. But Svartholmen stood empty. The rocks were bare, mist hung heavier than before, coiling lower over the lake's surface, like fingers reaching for the shore. "I swear she was there," Karl murmured, more to himself than to us. "She was watching us." "Maybe she wasn't real," Otto offered. "Maybe this place is getting to us." But no one really believed that. Over the next few days, the camp unraveled slowly. July 6th, 2 more men disappeared during daytime patrol, Johan and Richter. They had gone into the woods to set perimeter markers. We found one marker driven into the earth. No sign of the men, no footprints. July 7th, Fritz wandered off during kitchen duty, left his ladle behind, soup still hot in the pot. July 8th, Helmut and Rudy, both gone before dawn. They shared a tent, were last seen speaking in hushed voices about the singing. Each disappearance was quiet. No screams, no gunfire. The man just ceased to be. By July 10th, our numbers had halved. Commander Metze began sleeping with his Luger under his pillow. He no longer shaved and spoke in short, clipped bursts. At night, he paced between tents, muttering to himself about purity, duty, and the mist. The remaining soldiers were fraying. Karl had grown paranoid, refusing to be alone. He made Eric stand beside him even when relieving himself behind a tree. Sigmund stopped eating, said the food smelled strange. He'd sit for hours, staring into the woods, sometimes mouthing prayers that weren't from any catechism I knew. Otto cleaned his rifle obsessively, even polished the rounds. He said it calmed him, gave him focus. Eric began drawing symbols into the dirt with a stick. Nordic ruins, he said. Old protection spells. I didn't ask how he knew them. "There's something ancient in those trees," he told me one evening. "The locals never come near Halshan. We were warned. We didn't listen." "What is it?" I asked. "She's not a woman," he whispered. "She's something else, and she doesn't want us here." That night, I awoke again to the singing. It was closer. Not just faint notes carried by the wind, but distinct, melodic words. Not German, not Norwegian. The tongue was older, more primal. It chilled my spine, like icy fingers dragging down my vertebrae. I didn't leave the tent. I didn't even sit up. I just clenched my eyes shut and prayed silently to the Germanic Nordic god Donar, aka Thor, for protection to make it until the next morning. On July 12th, we found a trail of uniforms in the woods. 3 tunics, 3 helmets, 3 belts, no bodies. Just the smell of moss and something sweet beneath it, like flowers rotting in sunlight. Eric bent down and picked up a scrap of paper caught in a tree root. It was a sketch, shaky lines, but unmistakable. It showed the woman from the lake. But on her, growing from her head, were horns. "We're not dealing with anything human," Eric said, finally voicing what the rest of us had feared. "What does she want?" Otto asked. "I don't know," I said. "But I think she's choosing." By July 13th, only 11 of us remained. That night, the forest changed. The trees creaked, though there was no wind. The shadows were wrung, longer than they should have been, twisting and crawling like they were alive. Karl and Sigmund stood guard, while I tried to rest. Otto kept muttering in his sleep. Eric lay awake, whispering names into the dark. We heard movement in the trees. Not footsteps, not animals. Something heavier, slower, like wet cloth being dragged through brush. Sigmund fired his rifle into the woods. Once, twice. Nothing answered. Nothing moved. But the singing never stopped. Just behind the trees. Soft. Calling. July 14th, 1943. The day began with the same deathly quiet that had plagued the camp for over a week. But this time, the silence wasn't just unsettling. It felt hollow, as though the forest itself had grown tired of watching us and had turned its face away in disgust. There were only 6 of us left now. Commander Metze, Karl, Otto, Sigmund, Eric, and myself. The once orderly camp looked like a graveyard. Abandoned gear still lay where it had been dropped in haste by vanished men. Helmets, rifles, mess kits. It wasn't that we were too lazy to clean. It was superstition. No one dared to touch the belongings of the disappeared. It felt like tampering with the dead. Their tents remained zipped and silent, like tombs. The commander stood at morning roll call, hunched like a vulture over the camp map. His eyes were wild, sleepless, bloodshot, twitching with the weight of too many nightmares. "No more games," Metze said, his voice a gravelly rasp. "We leave at dawn, to the town of Elverum, via road or through the forest. Doesn't matter, no more delays." No one argued. Even Karl, whose sarcasm never missed a boat, stood still as stone. "Tonight," Metze continued, "you five will guard the perimeter. All night. No sleeping, no fire, no light. If something moves, shoot it." "Commander," I ventured. "What if it's one of our own? If someone returns?" Metze's stare cut through me like wire. "No one is returning, Hoffman," the commander replied without any sort of emotions. He walked away without another word. We spent the day checking ammunition, reinforcing the defenses, though we knew deep down, sandbags and barbed wire would do nothing against what we were facing. If it even was something, maybe it was madness. Maybe we had all just snapped. But the song was real. Night fell quickly that evening. We took positions, Otto and Sigmund near the northern ridge, Karl on the west side, Eric near the southern line, and I paced a broad sweep near the commander's stand on the east. It was cold, unnaturally so for a night in the middle of the summer, even if it is in Norway. My breath fogged in the air as I paced. Trees loomed like silent witnesses all around, their branches twisting like fingers in the moonlight. The campfire remained unlit. Our only light came from the full moon, casting long shadows that danced like spirits just beyond the edge of the woods. 11:10 p.m. I heard a faint rustling from the north. I lifted my rifle and crept toward Otto and Sigmund's post. Empty. No sign of a struggle. No blood. Their rifles were propped neatly against the tree. "Sigmund? Otto?" I whispered. "This isn't funny." Nothing. I crouched. The soil was undisturbed. It was like they had been lifted from the earth. I backed away slowly, resisting the urge to run. My skin crawled. My instincts, those sharpened by the SS, forged by youth and arrogance, were completely useless now. 11:41 p.m. A sharp breath of wind whipped through the trees. Then, a voice, faint, calling. "Karl?" It was a woman's voice. I sprinted toward the west. Karl's station was still, his rifle leaning against a stump, but he was gone. I turned in place, heart thudding. My finger rested on the trigger of my carabiner 98K, ready to snap at the slightest motion. Something brushed past my ear. A whisper, not words, just a sound, like breath, like silk dragging through frost. "Eric?" I muttered, not even believing it myself. I ran south. He was gone too. Just like that. Like they had never existed. By 12:30 a.m. on July 15th, I stood alone in the middle of the camp. The silence was deafening. My ears strained for any sound, any clue that I wasn't entirely alone in this damned forest. I stared at Metze's tent, every muscle in my body clenched. I didn't want to go in. I feared what I'd find. Or worse, what I wouldn't. But I had to know. I stepped inside. The tent was empty. The map table was overturned. Metze's papers scattered like autumn leaves. His Luger was missing. So was he. Gone. My knees nearly gave way. I steadied myself against the tent pole, feeling sweat crawl down my back like ice water. "No, no, no," I whispered to myself. I staggered outside, breathing heavily, clutching my rifle like a talisman. The moon bathed the camp in pale light. I turned slowly, expecting to see movement, but there was none. Until 2:02 a.m. A scream, far in the distance, toward the Swedish border. It wasn't loud, it wasn't panicked, it was brief, but it was unmistakably human, and male, and it cut through the night like a blade. I froze, listening. The forest swallowed the echo. I knew what I should do, stay here at the camp, wait for dawn, try to survive. But something inside me, something both dread and duty, told me to move. And I did so, rifle raised, breath sharp. I stepped into the woods, alone. And what I would find beyond those trees would change me and my fanatical views forever. I moved through the trees like a ghost, my boots nearly silent on the forest floor. Every step eastward carried the weight of dread pressing into my spine. The scream still echoed in my ears, though I hadn't heard it again since the first brief cry. The trees became denser, gnarled roots twisted from the soil like black veins. The air grew colder. My hands trembled on the stock of my rifle, my breath fogging before me as though I'd entered a different season entirely. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft, feminine. Theo? My name, spoken with the voice of someone I hadn't heard in nearly half a decade. Helga? I said aloud, my voice cracking. I froze, and there she was, standing between two trees ahead of me. My younger sister Helga. She looked just as I remembered her when I was 15, blonde, bright-eyed, wearing her favorite summer dress. But the light in her eyes, it wasn't right. Her smile was too wide, her head tilted ever so slightly, like her neck lacked the strength to hold it straight. Come, Theo, she said. Come with me. Against all reason, I followed. She moved ahead without a sound, gliding through brambles and roots without disturbing a single branch. My legs ached. My breath grew ragged, yet she never slowed. We walked deeper until even the moonlight faded. The pines grew impossibly tall here, like cathedral columns blotting out the sky. Then I stumbled. My boot struck something metal in the dark. I lowered my flashlight and saw it. Commander Metz's Luger. Beside it, 3 magazines. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just the weapon. Abandoned. Helga? I called out. No answer. I raised the flashlight again. She stood 20 meters ahead, but her posture had changed. Her head was now completely tilted, chin against her collarbone. Her hair floated gently, as though underwater. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Deeper. Wrong. You're so close now, big brother. I took a step back, and she vanished. No flash, no fade. 1 second she was there, and the next, only trees. The silence was complete, except for one thing. It crept between the trunks in wisps, swirling gently. As I moved forward, I realized I had entered a clearing, a perfect circle of trees. The ground was soft with moss. Some rocks, around it and unnaturally smooth, sat arranged in a ring. And within that ring, mist danced in a column. And bodies, I gasped, impaled on broken branches at the edge of the clearing, were our men. The missing, though the ones I saw were mostly the ones I hadn't had conversations with. 2 of them I recognized clearly. It was Armin and Gunther. Their bodies had been hung or pierced through in grotesque, ritualistic fashion, still in uniform, eyes wide open, mouths agape as if still screaming. And worst of all, their chests were ripped open. I could see their hearts. But something was off. Although they didn't move an inch, their hearts were still beating. I wanted to run and scream, but I couldn't, because the moonlight broke through the trees at that moment. It illuminated something in the center. Standing between the stones, its back to me. The woman. Her hair flowed unnaturally in the still air. She wore no shoes. Her white dress clung to her frame like it had grown from her skin. I raised my flashlight with trembling fingers. The beam found her. She didn't move. "Who? What are you?" I croaked. Then, something unnatural happened. The dress withered away into leaves and dark vines that curled around her like living things. Her skin was no longer pale. It shimmered like bark in snow. She sprouted a tail, long and coiled like a serpent's. 2 horns rose from her head, curved like a deer's antlers, though shorter. She also grew twice her size, but worst of all, a part of her back was open. A glowing cavity of light pulsed from within her, and in the center of that horrible cleft, a heart, red, beating, alive. She got up and turned her gaze to me. Eyes like twin moons opened and locked onto my blue ones. Then, she began to rise. Her body levitated silently, gracefully, until she hovered 3 meters above the stone ring. I gripped my carabiner 98K tighter. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was looking into the face of something that had lived long before man. And I knew I had to fight it. The moment I knew I had to fight the female creature, she whispered something in a language I couldn't understand. Maybe Old Norse, but something red, what looked like blood, formed next to her. Then all of a sudden, the red thing formed something solid, but still red. It was launched at me. I jumped to my left and heard that the thing the creature had thrown at me had hit the ground hard, but it also made a kind of a splash. I looked back and saw some blood spatters on the moss ground. When I got up, I heard the creature say the same thing. I hid behind a tree and heard the loud and hard splash on the tree itself. I then aimed with my carabiner 98K and shot at the creature, but it apparently did nothing, not even a scratch. I wanted to try and shoot it in the heart from behind, but the floating creature seemed to turn wherever I ran, as if it could even see me through those trees. I then turned from one of the trees and shot again at the creature's face. Again, it did nothing. Yet, after I shot her, I noticed that some red lines, what also looked like blood, were connecting her with the trees? That can't be right, I said to myself. Trees don't have blood. Then, the creature said something else I couldn't understand. I don't know how it happened, but in various places around me, red liquid began to bubble from the ground. And out of that red liquid, big red spikes came out. I knew I had to run, since those spikes could even come out beneath me, and then I would be a goner. Even though I was battling something, I don't know if my soul would go to Valhalla if I would die in this fight, since I'm scared out of my mind, and maybe this creature would even take my soul for her own. After the spikes stopped, I again shot at her head. Once again, it did nothing, and the blood-red lines appeared again, like they shielded her in some way from attacks. That's when I saw it. The heart of one of my dead colleagues was glowing red. This thing, I muttered to myself, it feeds on the blood of its victims, coming from the heart. To spare the bullets of my carabiner 98K, I used Metz's Luger and fired a round in the heart of one of my fallen comrades. The heart splattered some blood, but then the entire body of my comrade vanished into samples of blood that flew through the air and were absorbed into the creature. I knew what I had to do now. Destroy all the bodies by shooting in the hearts, and when they were gone, I could shoot at the creature. It was then that the creature loudly whispered something else. I saw blood boiling inside the ring of rocks, and then that blood turned into black smoke that spread in a circle. I jumped over the smoke, barely missing it. I thought that I perhaps knew how to beat it. I kept hiding from the creature's attacks, whilst simultaneously destroying the bodies of my former comrades. But I didn't see all of them. I didn't see Karl, Otto, Sigmund, Eric, and not even Commander Metze. The last body I destroyed was the one that used to be Armin. Then, I took my carabiner and shot at the creature's left arm. It fell to the ground with a short but loud scream. She turned her gaze to me, and what happened next seemed like magic. She made an illusion of my younger sister, who looked at me and pulled out her arm for help. Then, the creature turned her hand into a grip and I saw the illusion of Helga disappear, not just disappearing, but exploding in blood. This made my blood boil as the creature was sobbing from the shot she received. Without hesitation, I placed the bayonet on my carabiner. I didn't want to shoot the creature in the heart. I wanted to stab and slash it to death. I ran towards the big creature and stood ready to slash her heart with the bayonet whilst she was still panting. "This is for my comrades and commander, you filthy beast," I said with utter disgust. I raised my gun and swung it to slash at the heart. Just then, something unusual happened. 3 white circles formed as I tried to hit the heart. I was bounced back into the air and landed about 12 meters from the creature. I heard it screech loudly, and when I got back up, the creature leapt back into the air, but the woods around me seemed different. There were many trees that had just disappeared, gone out of thin air, but not all, and on some of them hung more bodies of my comrades, this time higher. I knew I had to aim more directly with either Metz's Luger or even my carabiner, and I had to hit the hearts. The creature did some of her previous attacks, but after destroying 3 bodies, she spun around into the air and said something she didn't say earlier. Dark smoke came into the surrounding area, but that was not my worry. My worry was the red flashing orbs that were gathering around me, and after 2 seconds, they exploded. I knew I had to move, for this creature was now angrier with me. Got some tricks up your sleeve, huh?" I said. Even though I knew what I had to do, I was scared out of my mind. From both the creature and the fact that I had to destroy the bodies of my former comrades, even though their hearts were still beating. After I destroyed all of the bodies that were hanging high in the pine trees with careful and precise shootings, I shot at the creature's right shoulder. It once more let out a short yet loud scream and fell to the ground between the ring of stones. I lunged forward at the creature's hole in its back. This time, I wanted to stab her. "This time, you won't escape," I yelled angrily, but also scared. Just before the blow was struck, I was bounced back again by the unknown shield that protected her heart. The 3 white circles showed itself again. "Scheiße!" I yelled at the top of my lungs as I was thrown back. The creature screamed again, and when I got up, I saw that I was now standing in a large clearing in the forest. All the surrounding trees had disappeared. The moonlight of the full moon was now shining clearly at me and the creature. Then, the creature went back into the air again and summoned 8 more bodies that I hadn't seen before. Those 8 bodies floated in a circle around the creature. I swear, from those 8 bodies, there were Karl, Otto, Sigmund, Eric, and even Commander Metze. The bodies were now closer, and I could take down the first 2 with ease with Metz's Luger. Then, the creature raised its arm into the air and spoke something I didn't hear before, louder this time. After that, I saw beams of white light as white as the moon falling from the sky itself. There were dozens of them. I managed to dodge all of them and destroy the body of Karl in the process. I continued like this whilst the creature was now using all of its attack, save for the one where she throws that blood at me that had the impact of a stone. Finally, after the last body, the one of Commander Metze, was destroyed, I shot the creature in the stomach with the last bullet of my carabiner. The creature once more fell on the ground, and I charged at it with full speed. But as I jumped her, I was bounced back again and flew about 15 meters behind. Yet, this time the creature did not rise. It remained still, beaten. I noticed this, and as I got up, I charged again, jumping onto the creature and stabbed her in the heart via the hole in her back. This time, I pierced through it. This time, blood came out. The creature let out a loud screech, and I stumbled back. Yet, she didn't fight back. Instead, she crawled on the ground. Eventually, she turned to me, and I was above her. She was sobbing, and for the last time, my SS killer instincts took over. I stabbed her multiple times in the chest with pure sadism, but also pain and fright. After what seemed like hours, I finally put the bayonet of my carabiner 98K into her head with full force. After that, I panted for about 5 minutes, then I collapsed. Before my eyes closed, I saw the body of the dead creature one more time, and the moonlight of the full moon shining on it. When I opened my eyes, the first rays of sunlight crept over the distant trees. Dew coated the earth, and the air was still. My muscles screamed as I rolled onto my side. The creature was there, but she was no longer flesh and blood. She had crumpled into the mossy ground, her body still holding its humanoid shape, but she was made of moss entirely. Her veins were now flowered. Bright blue and white blossoms bloomed from where her horns once stood. And yet, her shape remained unmistakable, a haunting echo of the thing I had killed. I didn't move for nearly 20 minutes. I just lay there, breathing, watching as the moss woman began to blur with the greenery around her, as if the forest was reclaiming her. Eventually, I gripped my empty carabiner, dug its stock into the soil, and pulled myself to my feet. My whole body ached, my uniform torn, bloodied, crusted with dirt and gunpowder. I looked east one final time, toward the creature's resting place, and then I turned my back on the rising sun. I needed to go west, to the nearest settlement. I stumbled through the trees. The forest was eerily quiet again, but no longer in a haunting way. It felt cleansed almost, but I wasn't. I panted heavily. The memory of what I'd done clung to my skin, and then I saw them, glimpses of their faces. Karl, Otto, Sigmund, Eric, Commander Metze, their bodies, their hearts. The pain clawed up my throat, and I vomited violently against the base of a thick pine, sobbing, retching out whatever I could. "I'm sorry," I whispered with some tears in my eyes. "I didn't want to. I didn't." But the forest gave no answer. I trudged forward, every step slower. Eventually, I caught a first glimpse of the eastern part of Lake Ellison. But then, "Stana!" a voice barked from behind me. I froze. Hands up. I turned slowly. 5 Swedish soldiers stood at the tree line, rifles trained on me. One held a Swedish Mauser directly at my chest. I think I had unknowingly stepped onto Swedish soil tonight. He barked something at me in Swedish. Short, sharp commands. I didn't understand. The words tangled in my ears. I don't understand," I muttered in German. They didn't lower their weapons. Another Swedish soldier stepped forward and said something softer, still incomprehensible. But from his tone, I gathered one thing. They didn't want me on their soil again. After a tense pause, they lowered their rifles and motioned me back, towards the border. I obeyed. The rest of the day I wandered westward, every step heavy. The woods felt endless. I passed boulders, creeks, and collapsed trees I didn't remember seeing before. It was as if the path had changed. My compass was broken. My mind, maybe that too. At night, I curled up under trees, rifle in my lap, shivering. I didn't dream. Not of Helga, not of the creature. Just emptiness. After 3 days of wandering, I finally stumbled onto a dirt road. My boots hit gravel, and beyond it, I saw the town of Elverum. That's when I collapsed. SS soldier from the local garrison found me not far from the road. They rushed toward me, shouting questions. I looked up and fainted. 4 days later, I awoke in a small military hospital in Elverum. White sheets, high window, a nurse who never smiled. I stayed there for a week, recovering, remembering. Then came the knock. 2 SS men in black uniform led me to a small grey-walled room. There was only one man inside. Wilhelm Radies, the SS and police leader of occupied Norway, a man of stature and fear. His eyes studied me with cold interest. "Hoffman," he said, "you're the only survivor of SS Battalion Bloodwald." He didn't threaten. He didn't shout. Instead, he made an SS guard attach me to a lie detector. I told him everything. The woman, the singing, the floating bodies, the creature's heart, what I had to do to survive. I expected to be shot afterwards by him, but the machine never spiked. Radies sat back in his chair and folded his hands. "You've told the truth," he finally said, "disturbing as it is." Then he added, almost thoughtfully, "Your features are exemplary, Hoffman." Aryan, strong, and just like that, he signed my release. I was transferred to Trondheim, stationed with the SS garrison there, but I wasn't the same. I no longer believed in the purity of race. I'd seen something in that forest, something older, more cruel, stronger than any Reich propaganda, and that experience shattered what I had once believed unshakable. I served quietly until the war's end. Then I was sent back to Germany, and I never looked back. Eventually, I settled in the village of Osberg, not far from Trier. I took an office job, met Alma, and raised a family. But the forest, it never left me. July 14th, 1993. I sat at the window, staring into the twilight sky. The sun sank behind the forested hills like it had 50 years ago. My hands trembled around my teacup. "Theo?" Alma asked gently. "You've been quiet all day." I didn't respond. She approached, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You do this every mid-July," she said softly. "You watch the sunset like it's hiding something. Even the children noticed it when they were younger. Please, what is going on?" I sighed. 50 years of silence. "Do you want to know the truth, Alma?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes." So I told her. Everything. The forest, my comrades, the creature, the blood, the moss. When I finished, I waited for laughter, for disbelief, for pity. Instead, Alma's face was pale. "You were lucky," she whispered. "Very lucky." I blinked in disbelief. "You believe me, dear?" She nodded slowly. "What you encountered that night was a skogsroa," she said. "A what?" I asked, dumbfounded. A skogsroa is a shape-shifting forest spirit from Swedish folklore. She appears as a young, beautiful, and almost dark-haired woman. Sometimes she sings, sometimes she whispers, but those men who follow her into the woods never return. I stared at her. Why couldn't she possess me with her singing? Alma looked at me with a strange smile. "Because you didn't believe she was beautiful. Not fully, not truly. You saw her black hair and thought her to be impure." I froze. My indoctrination, my fanaticism, it saved me, I muttered. She nodded. "Ironic, isn't it?" That night, I returned to the window. The stars were bright. The wind whistled through the trees beyond the field, and for the first time in 50 years, I whispered to the dark, "Rest now. Your forest is yours again." And in the hush that followed, I thought I heard it. A faint whisper of a woman. A soft one. But I would never follow it again.